kind of dictated a little bit more of our flow. But I thought we did a great job of still navigating the matchups that we wanted.
Nobody thought she could actually survive it against a mastermind defensive scheme engineered specifically to humiliate her on national television. But the brutal reality of professional basketball is that genuine greatness almost always demands walking straight through absolute fire. When Caitlin Clark stepped onto the professional hardwood for her rookie season, she didn't just arrive with a massive army of devoted fans and history-shattering television ratings. She carried an enormous, impossible-to-ignore target on her back that had every seasoned veteran and defensive coordinator in the league quietly scheming her total destruction. For months building up to this very moment, the basketball universe was completely overflowing with whispers, rumors, and flat-out speculation that the established names of the WNBA were actively conspiring to physically and psychologically dismantle the rookie sensation. You could feel it in the dirty plays during early season games, the excessively violent fouls that nearly crossed into an entirely different category of misconduct, and the relentless media disrespect pouring out of former players loudly insisting her college dominance was nothing but an overhyped illusion that would be brutally exposed the moment she competed against grown professional women. The narrative was cemented like concrete by the critics who confidently swore she would crash violently into a devastating rookie wall and that opposing teams were absolutely salivating for the golden opportunity to be the ones who permanently constructed that wall. Music. Behind firmly closed doors, locker rooms were allegedly buzzing with a deeply jealous energy, heavily fueled by massive sneaker contracts and unprecedented levels of media attention that countless veterans genuinely believed they had earned through years of sacrifice but never once received. This wasn't just competitive basketball anymore. It had evolved into a deeply personal, intensely publicized psychological warfare campaign, and the mounting pressure was completely suffocating as the bright lights grew exponentially more intense with every single matchup. But what the critics so catastrophically underestimated was the sheer, terrifying mental willpower of a music player who genuinely thrives on being cornered, disrespected, and written off by the very peers she spent her entire life idolizing. The stage was unmistakably set for a monumental collision between the most hyped rookie in modern sports history and a coaching staff that absolutely refused to become just another viral highlight package circulating across social media. But that was never the complete story because the individual actively constructing the elaborate trap designed to publicly humiliate the Fever star was a tactical genius who almost never made mistakes and had devoted an entire lifetime to proving her own doubters catastrophically wrong. Enter Natalie Nakasi, a brilliant, utterly relentless basketball mind who spent years grinding through the punishing trenches of professional coaching, shattering barriers, and surgically dissecting the precise mechanics of the greatest players walking the planet. She was never just some random assistant coach handed a clipboard and a title. She was a defensive architect of the highest order who had logged serious time inside the NBA system, working directly alongside the Los Angeles Clippers and absorbing elite-level analytical strategies that she transported straight into the WNBA. Nakas understood precisely how to locate and ruthlessly exploit a player's most deeply buried weaknesses. And she had invested countless sleepless nights consuming endless hours of film on Clark, meticulously studying her exact tendencies, her specific frustration triggers, music, and precisely how she responded when the physical pressure was cranked all the way up to a completely suffocating intensity. The defensive blueprint she engineered wasn't simply a standard rotation designed to contain Caitlin. It was an elaborate, full-scale psychological operation built to systematically frustrate her, aggressively trap her off every single pick and roll, and force her to surrender the basketball to teammates the defense was absolutely convinced couldn't withstand the scorching heat of the moment. In the tight, secretive coaching circle surrounding the league, the rumors were spreading wildly that Naka's music had finally cracked the definitive code, uncovering the ultimate defensive formula to completely neutralize the deep threes and chaotic, lightning-fast playmaking that made the rookie so overwhelmingly dangerous to guard. Heading into this massively anticipated matchup, the suffocating tension inside the arena was thick enough to slice cleanly through with a knife, with fans holding their collective breath to witness whether the golden girl of basketball was about to be officially and permanently dethroned. The crowd understood precisely what was at stake. The media had their high-definition cameras surgically locked onto Clark's every micro-expression and body language shift, and the opposing bench radiated pure, unbothered arrogance, supremely confident they were moments away from publicly exposing the rookie for everything the critics claimed she truly was. And what unfolded next shocked absolutely everyone because the first half played out exactly like a masterfully choreographed horror film for the Indiana Fever. From the very literal opening tip-off, It was agonizingly obvious that the defensive scheme Nakas had implemented was an absolute, suffocating nightmare for Clark and the entire Fever offensive infrastructure. Every single moment she even glanced toward the basketball, two determined defenders were instantly invading her personal space, violently bumping her off her preferred positions and ruthlessly denying her any room to breathe, let alone plant her feet and launch a shot. Nasi's ferociously aggressive strategy was executing to absolute perfection, manufacturing incredibly hurried shot attempts, triggering chaotic and completely uncharacteristic turnovers, music, and reducing the normally explosive Fever offense to something that looked completely disjointed and thoroughly lost on the hardwood. You could physically witness the frustration violently boiling over in real time as the rookie desperately attempted to force impossibly risky passes through completely sealed defensive windows, music, resulting in tipped passes, outright steals, and effortless fast breaks thundering the other direction for the opposing squad. The battle-tested veteran defenders were actively capitalizing on every ounce of that chaos, talking enormous amounts of trash directly into Clark's ear, making absolutely certain Caitlin understood that this wasn't college anymore, music, and that her celebrated logo shots now belonged to a distant, fading memory. Social media platforms were already erupting with catastrophic force as the dedicated haters sprinted to their keyboards at absolute lightning speed to triumphantly declare that the hype train had finally and permanently jumped the rails and that the rookie was completely and utterly out of her depth against seasoned veterans who genuinely understood how to play suffocating physical defense. On the sideline, Nikkei and the rest of the opposing coaching staff appeared remarkably composed, casually exchanging knowing smiles and supremely confident gestures because their extensively researched master plan was unfolding with stunning precision and without a single solitary complication. It felt like the definitive, impossible-to-deny confirmation that all the vicious, circulating rumors about Clark being fundamentally overrated were finally being validated in stunning fashion on a massive national broadcast for the entire watching world to witness firsthand. But things were about to take a dramatic, completely unprecedented turn because history has repeatedly proven that you can only keep a generational, ferociously, motivated talent locked inside a cage for so long before they violently tear the hinges clean off the door. Inside the eerily quiet locker room at halftime, the atmosphere had to be overwhelmingly suffocating for the Indiana Fever, who were staring directly down the barrel of a humiliating, momentum-crushing blowout defeat. While nobody can claim to know the exact unfiltered words exchanged behind those heavy closed doors, the intense speculation pouring from well-connected insiders strongly suggests a fiery, absolutely no-nonsense reality check erupted between the coaching staff and the exhausted players. Clark wasn't simply battling a brutally effective defensive masterpiece drawn up by a tactical genius. She was actively fighting the crushing, invisible weight of an entire league that seemingly wanted nothing more than to watch her publicly fail in order to validate their own deeply wounded egos. The enormous mental burden of absorbing literal physical punishment night after relentless night, enduring the completely exhausting media circus that followed her every single move, and continuously hearing established veterans casually dismissing and belittling her monumental accomplishments, music, would have entirely shattered a normal player's competitive spirit beyond recognition. But Clark simply isn't constructed with the psychological blueprint of a normal player. And the widespread rumors swirling through the league's inner circles strongly suggest she looked her worn-down teammates directly in their eyes and solemnly promised that the second half was going to be an entirely different, vastly more calculated and aggressive game in terms of pure offensive execution. She had sharply recognized that playing directly into Nasi's suffocating traps was precisely the outcome the defense had engineered and desperately wanted. So she needed to completely reorganize the entire geometry and relentless pace of the court to make their scheme feel profoundly uncomfortable. She understood deep in her competitive core that she needed to shoot from distances they physically couldn't close out on without catastrophically shattering their entire rotation, and deliver passes with a velocity and anticipation level they simply had no realistic ability to react to in time. Music. The Fever coaching staff implemented subtle but absolutely game-changing offensive adjustments during those precious 15 minutes, repositioning screens slightly higher on the floor and constructing elaborate dummy actions designed to confuse the relentless defensive pressure for just the tiniest fraction of one crucial second. The music trap was still lurking and waiting for her out there on the brilliantly lit hardwood, but Caitlin was walking back through that tunnel carrying a terrifying, ice-cold, razor-sharp level of focus that absolutely nobody inside that building had witnessed from her yet. And what miraculously unfolded across the next 20 minutes of regulation basketball was nothing short of outright legendary, violently redirecting the entire narrative of the season in the blink of a single eye. The very instant the third quarter officially tipped off, something deep within the atmospheric energy of the entire arena shifted with tremendous force, as if every last molecule of breathable air had been instantaneously and completely evacuated from the building. Clark composedly advanced the basketball up the music court, immediately recognized the same aggressive double team materializing with textbook precision exactly as it had throughout the miserable first half. But rather than hesitating for even a fraction of a moment or retreating backward, she calmly pulled up from a completely absurd, logic-defying distance and buried a deep three-pointer directly into the face of the desperately lunging defender. The stunned crowd released a thunderous collective gasp of pure disbelief, but that initial shot was merely the terrifying warning signal of a devastating avalanche that was now seconds away from completely burying the opposition. Suddenly, the entire tempo and pace of the game exploded to a frenetic, completely uncontrollable level as Clark began threading the basketball with lightning-fast passes that seemed to genuinely and outright defy the most fundamental laws of physics. She was miraculously locating cutting teammates through impossibly narrow defensive windows, delivering the ball to them perfectly in full stride for clean, uncontested layups that left the bewildered defenders spinning in absolute, helpless circles. Nikkei's previously pristine, universally praised defensive architecture was visibly crumbling and collapsing in horrifying real time as the rookie rapidly and surgically exploited microscopic gaps that simply music had not existed anywhere on the floor just 20 short minutes earlier. When the defense desperately pressed aggressively up high to eliminate the devastating deep shooting threat, Clark detonated right past them with a blistering, breathtaking first step, completely caving in the entire painted area music, and kicking the basketball out to wide open, completely unguarded teammates waiting beyond the arc. When they cowardly sagged back even the smallest fraction of a single inch to protect the vulnerable driving lanes, she made them pay the absolute ultimate price with ice-cold daggers launched from well beyond the three-point line, locking her cold, unwavering eyes onto the opposing bench as the basketball snapped cleanly through the net. It was a spectacular, deeply breathtaking masterclass in pure offensive brilliance that left the previously arrogant, supremely confident opposing players appearing completely gassed, utterly disoriented, and frantically searching the air for answers that simply weren't coming. The momentum reversed direction so violently and so instantaneously that the entire building physically felt like it was trembling and shaking from the sheer overwhelming noise generated by the crowd. And the Indiana Fever went from being completely buried alive under an avalanche of pressure to absolutely dominating every dimension and every flow of the basketball game. But the single most incredible, undeniably satisfying element of the entire sequence wasn't just the breathtaking volume of shots she was confidently converting. Music. It was the complete and total psychological devastation that was visibly, unmistakably unfolding on the opposing sideline in painfully slow motion. Natalie Nakasi stood frozen near the bench, her facial expression rapidly and helplessly shifting from beaming, proud satisfaction to absolute, unfiltered, soul-crushing disbelief as she watched her meticulously constructed masterpiece dissolve into ash before her eyes. She had invested countless exhausting hours of her life engineering what she was completely convinced was the perfect, impenetrable defensive blueprint. An airtight, suffocating trap that had functioned with brilliant, clockwork precision against some of the most experienced and decorated guards on the entire planet, only to helplessly watch a first-year rookie dismantle it into absolute shreds within the span of a few brutally efficient minutes. You could visibly witness the frantic, panic-soaked adjustments being desperately shouted at maximum volume from the sidelines, the frenzied music, rapid-fire substitutions frantically attempting to locate absolutely anyone remaining on the roster capable of physically slowing down the relentless, unstoppable onslaught. But absolutely nothing worked. When a truly special once-in-a-generation player enters that elusive, completely untouchable competitive zone, no volume of brilliant coaching strategy, aggressive defensive scheming, or calculated physical intimidation can realistically stop them. And Clark was delivering an absolute masterclass in music, systematically and methodically destroying the competitive spirit of an entire defensive unit. The television cameras mercilessly captured every subtle, undeniable signal of pure panic spreading like wildfire, battle-tested veteran defenders hurling their arms skyward in total, helpless frustration. The coaching staff furiously boring their eyes into their dry erase clipboards, desperately attempting to conjure an answer that quite simply did not exist anywhere within the established boundaries of basketball. It was a brutal, deeply humbling awakening that every meticulously constructed scouting report became completely and utterly worthless when placed directly in front of a true once-in-a-generation anomaly who could read the entire floor like a supercomputer processing information in real time. The sheer, unfiltered audacity embedded within Clark's shot selection combined seamlessly with her terrifying, robotic shooting accuracy effectively transformed the professional court into her own personal, endlessly entertaining playground. It was a colossal, impossible-to-dismiss statement delivered directly to every single hater, relentless critic, and fiercely jealous veteran scattered throughout the entire league that she was never some carefully manufactured media creation strategically propped up by network television executives. She was an unstoppable, genuinely terrifying force of nature moving at full speed. And this extraordinary, reality-defying second-half surge was about to permanently cement a comeback victory that absolutely nobody anywhere in the basketball universe had seen coming. Music. As the final glorious buzzer rang out and reverberated powerfully through every corner of the packed arena, securing a massive, definitive, statement-making triumph for the Indiana Fever, the entire manufactured narrative suffocating the WNBA season was instantly and permanently rewritten from scratch. The massive, logic-defying comeback wasn't simply another routine tally quietly added to the win column. It was a thunderous, undeniable, deeply threatening message transmitted directly to every coaching staff and general manager operating anywhere in the professional league. The persistent, endlessly recycled rumors of an approaching rookie wall were completely and utterly annihilated on the spot, instantly replaced by a deep, quietly lingering, and entirely unspoken fear spreading among opponents who now terrifyingly understood that even their most carefully constructed and thoroughly researched defensive blueprints could be surgically dismantled within a single half of basketball. The toxic, volatile landscape of social media flipped completely on its head as the very same loudmouthed critics who had been ruthlessly celebrating in the opening quarter frantically deleted their deeply embarrassing posts and scrambled desperately to manufacture weak, hollow excuses for why the opposing defense had so catastrophically and completely imploded. Music. This specific legendary performance definitively and permanently proved that Caitlin possessed an elite, almost uniquely dangerous level of in-game basketball adaptability, singularly capable of rapidly processing extraordinarily complex defensive traps in real time and physically executing the precise, correct counters with flawless perfection and without so much as a single heartbeat of hesitation. The post-game press conferences were immediately saturated with stunned, noticeably subdued reflections, with deeply frustrated opposing players violently forced to swallow enormous portions of their considerable pride and publicly acknowledge before rolling cameras that the rookie was simply operating on an entirely separate, completely untouchable competitive level. The relentless media circus pivoted sharply and immediately from aggressively questioning her physical readiness for the professional game to genuinely and seriously debating whether any identifiable ceiling to her immense, terrifying potential even existed. It was a franchise-altering, deeply significant victory that completely galvanized the entire Indiana locker room from top to bottom, permanently demonstrating they could confidently compete with the absolute, elite teams in the league when they simply surrendered total trust to the generational talent leading their offensive attack. Ultimately, this deeply legendary and permanently unforgettable performance will inevitably be recorded in the history books as the precise, defining moment the rest of the professional league finally and fully absorbed the terrifying, undeniable truth about Caitlin Clark. Natalie Nakas and her widely respected defensive brilliance executed absolutely everything with textbook correctness, flawlessly running a sophisticated game plan that should have comfortably and permanently broken any overhyped, normal-caliber rookie. But instead of breaking her, it only served to violently awaken a supremely motivated and dangerously hungry sleeping giant from a deep slumber. The extreme, calculated hostility, the deliberately dirty physical punishment, the concealed and deeply toxic locker room resentment. Absolutely none of it carries any lasting weight or consequence when you can walk confidently onto any professional court, and casually produce a second half that completely redefines the entire geometry and foreseeable future of the sport itself. Clark didn't simply and incredibly win a massively anticipated basketball game on that unforgettable night. She violently and permanently shattered the carefully maintained, fiercely guarded established hierarchy and conclusively proved that no combination of veteran scheming or coaching genius can actively obstruct or delay the inevitable, unstoppable evolution of the game. It leaves absolutely everyone throughout the sport quietly wondering that if the greatest and most celebrated tactical minds in the entire basketball universe genuinely cannot figure out how to contain her when the lights burn the brightest and the pressure reaches its most suffocating peak. What on earth happens when she finally arrives at her absolute, most terrifying competitive ceiling? The entire WNBA is officially, completely, and permanently on notice. Music. And the single most terrifying reality facing the rest of this intensely competitive league is that Caitlin Clark is somehow, almost unbelievably, only just getting started.